Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to part 2 season 3 of What If Izuku Had a Villain Quirk. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. Izuku was meditating in his room, and suggestion by his old mentor that would allow him to more easily switch from emotion to emotion. He was in a relaxed position, the sound of his old All Might videos in the background providing a calming, nostalgic feeling. He was interrupted by a ringing at the door to his home. The teen opened it up to find Kaminari and Mineta, the two inviting him to the pool with them. They dragged him to school where they had turned in a request to use the pool in the facility for endurance training. Upon receiving confirmation, the trio went to the pool and Izuku invited the rest of their class, much to his perverted classmates' dismay. They were absolutely worn out when Ida finally called for everyone to have a break. The blue-haired male went over to Midoriya, handing him a drink as he sat next to him. The Viridian-eyed youth noticed this and started up conversation. Is there something wrong, Ada? No, not at all. I was just thinking. The teen huffed a laugh as he sipped his drink. Out of all of the people who lectured me after the Hasu incident, it was your words that really struck a chord. We were never really close and yet you knew exactly what to say to me. Well, I guess that's just how my mind works. The jungle-haired adolescent laughed softly. I've always been one for analysis. Well, everything. I play through as many situations as possible, look deeper into problems, sometimes into the problems of others. I saw how desperately you wanted to live up to the Ingenium name, and I saw the amazing potential that you had to do it. The two exchanged smiles as they were interrupted by the loud yelling of a certain abrasive blonde. A race was proposed by Ada due to Bakugo's competitive spirit, and that filled up the last of the time slots the students had. Seeing everyone's quirks all together sparked memories in Todoroki, Izuku, and Tenya's minds. Promises of being the best heroes they could be. Heroes that were in a league all on their own. Everyone left to head home afterwards, thoroughly exhausted. Class 1 met up the next day right outside UA. Aizawa was giving them a speech of how they would be improving themselves at the training camp to go beyond plus ultra. Izuku was chatting with Momo and Shoto, the trio conversing on what could go down at the camp. The excitement was even getting to their normally stoic, heterochromatic friend, his dual-colored eyes gleaming with a readiness and determination. That seemed to be the general mood. Even Class 1B, who would be joining them, had the same level of excitement. Aizawa turned his head, starting a sentence of how they would be arriving at their first stop in an hour, only to find literally no one was listening to him. The bus came to a stop at a mountain overlook, everyone stretching out from the hour they spent shoulder to shoulder on the bus. Several questioned why they stopped at such a place, hearing the one a homeroom teacher ask them if they really thought they were here just for a pit stop. The question was answered by the door to a car next to them opening. Figures that only some of the students had only seen in videos and magazines stepping out. The duo that was there performed a choreographed dance, introducing themselves as the Wild Pussycats. They explained that their group owned a giant stretch of the land in the mountain range and pointed out the location of the camp, several miles from where they were and down the mountain. Catching on to what was going to happen, the students all began to inch back towards the bus, some beginning to sprint towards it. This was all for naught as a wave of earth swallowed them all and tossed them carelessly off the cliff they were perched on. Mandalay called down to where the students fell, saying they should be able to make it to the camp by lunch if they could make it past the forest of beasts. They promptly found out it was aptly named as a monstrous thing blocked the way of Minta as the diminutive boy attempted to speed through. It raised a three-fingered hand, preparing to crush the purple-haired boy. Koda attempted to use his quirk to calm the beast. However, Izuku could see it had no effect and used his quirk to propel himself forward and knock Minoru out of the monster's way. He pondered why his classmate's voice had no effect. When he saw part of the thing's jaw crumble away, he called out his discovery to his classmates, several of them assisting in taking down their opponent in a matter of seconds. Just as they thought they had a break, they heard roaring in the distance, everyone's guard being up again. The students knew their only possible method of getting to the camp in time was to cut through the forest and take the quickest possible route together. The class separated into groups, everyone working together to take down the wave of earthen monsters coming their way. Midoriya, despite being at a disadvantage due to their foes being abiotic, still used his quirk as best he could. The teen called for Ada to help launch him faster through the air, where he swung up onto the monster and used his gas to slam it into the ground. Despite their best efforts, the never-ending wave of enemies exhausted them, extending the time it took to get to the camp to sunset. They all looked like zombies as they stumbled out of the tree line. They expected to be scolded for how long it took them to get free of the forest, only for the blonde pussycat to start singing praises of how well they did. She even pointed out Tenya, Shoto, Katsuki, and Izuku, saying they did exceptionally well. The woman was so hyped up she claimed dibs on the students, much to their dismay. Eventually, the emerald-eyed boy spoke up and pointed out the little kid that had been with the two pros since the beginning of the day, wondering who he was. Mandalay explained that Koda was the son of her cousin and that he now lived with them. When the boy was asked to say hello to them, all he did was glower silently. The protege of Midnight was extremely hesitant to approach him, noting how intense the glare he had aimed at him was. He prompted Ada to do so instead, somewhat glad he did as the tall boy received an uppercut directly to a sensitive place. The jungle-haired boy went to help his friend, gently scolding the little kid about how wrong it was to kick someone there when they were only introducing themselves. The menacing tyke turned back towards them, saying how he didn't wish to be around wannabe heroes and stalked off. The students were given a hearty dinner to make up for the fact they lost out on lunch. In the corner of his eyes, Midoriya saw Mandalay's second cousin stalk off with a box of vegetables. He wondered whatever could have given him such an attitude. Afterwards, while the students were bathing, Minta was up to his perverted ways once more, even climbing the wall separating the boys and girls, only to be smacked down by Koda. The boy was thanked by the girls, instinctively looking at them and then stumbling back, falling off the wall with Midoriya barely catching him. The freckled youth brought the kid to Mandalay, the boy currently unconscious. The thought was greatly appreciated by the telepathic hero as she took care of her cousin's son. The student's curiosity got the better of him as he questioned why the raven-haired kid hated heroes so much. Pixie Bob entered and began the answer to his question, her teammate taking over. Koda's parents were also heroes and they had been murdered while defending citizens, an honorable death for a hero. However, to their son, they had just up and left him. It likely made him bitter towards many people, especially since they seemed to be so set on praising the way that they died. The brunette woman expressed a concern on whether or not her cousin felt trapped living with her. The male could do nothing but stand there, having no reply for what information he had just received. Eraserhead was being vague about what they were doing, handing a ball for Bakugo to throw, exactly like when he first tested them. Some of the pupils guessed it was like a benchmark to see how much stronger their quirks had gotten. However, when the ball finally landed, the ashen blonde discovered his score had barely improved. Their teacher admitted that, while they had been through a lot and some aspects of their abilities had improved, the raw potential of their quirks were still lacking. Everyone was assigned unique exercises that would push the boundaries of their quirks and improve their power, potency, or volume of the quirk. Izuku himself was separated farther away from the other students in order for his quirk to not affect them. He was letting out concentrated blasts of his gas against the dirt monsters Class 1 have fought before. The task he had was to keep them back, or even shatter the exterior of them, with the pressure of the gas while also working on how fast he could produce his gas. That combined with the other ridiculously rough jobs given to the rest of his classmates made Class 1 be pale as they met up with their fellow UA students. The training didn't die down until the sun was once more setting in the distant mountaintops. It was then that Ragdoll revealed that the students would be cooking their own meals that night, much to some of their dismay. As everyone had begun to eat, Emerald Eyes watched as a certain black-haired kid stalked away from all the commotion. He grabbed a plate of rice and curry, quietly following the boy to a small cliff overhanging the forest. The sound of his stomach rumbling made Midoriya shake his head as he announced his presence. "It sounds like you're rather hungry." The tyke's head snapped around as he glared at the intruder. "I brought some curry for you from the camp. I would suggest you eat it before it gets cold. Just leave me alone. How did you even get here?" "Just get out of here. I don't want to hang out with you." The boy allowed his hat to shadow his eyes as he turned from the teen. "Spending your time to improve your quirk is stupid. All you want to do is show off." Izuku stayed exactly where he stood and carefully approached the topic of the kid's parents, setting him off and making him blame Mandalay immediately. The young man apologized softly as he explained he had put research into them, the water hose heroes, and what happened to them. The jungle-haired listened as the child before him ranted, catching on that he didn't hate heroes, he hated quirks as a whole. "You think all that quirks do is hurt people, don't you? I thought that way about my quirk." He felt eyes on him as he continued. "I always thought my quirk could only hurt others. I refused to look past it. I didn't realize that there was so much more to it. Will you shut up already? I told you to leave me alone." Koda whipped his head towards the freckled adolescent before him. "What are you even talking about? What does this even have to do with you?" The protege of Midnight finished off his question. "Your experience with the quirks has made you bitter towards them. I understand that you're in pain, but that pain is blinding you into thinking that the existence of quirks is why your parents died. If you want to blame anything, Blame the messed up persona that the villain that killed them had. I'll leave the curry here for you. Please contemplate what I said, Coda, and head home soon. Mandalay is clearly worried about you. The teen walked away as the boy looked down at the plate, fists clenched. He softly whispered for everyone to shut up as he shook slightly. On a plateau, several miles away, a group was congregated on top of it. They were all villains, waiting for a few more of their own. Each one was far more dangerous than the petty thugs from the USJ incident. They were stronger, smarter, and more cunning than any of them. Fate just hated making life easy for UA students. The next day was filled with even more training. Many of the students exhausted before the stroke of noon that day. Midoriya was slightly fatigued from his exercise, but for the most part he was better off than the other students. He briefly contemplated asking his teacher if any other of the staff would arrive, before dismissing it after remembering the hoops Eraserhead had talked about and keeping the location undisclosed. Everyone did their best until it was time for them to cook their meals under the setting sun. Jade-colored eyes scanned the grounds as he searched for Coda, noting the boy was probably at his secret hideout. He struck up with Todoroki, explaining everything that occurred last night. Do you think my advice was well given, Shoto? Maybe I should have been gentler in delivering it. I think that you did your best. Words can only go so far. Izuku, the heterochromatic boy, set the pot he was holding down at his actions that produced the most noticeable effect. If you really want to get to him, do something about it. The words of his friend resonated with something deep within him. Memories of how he met All Might in Midnight, working hard to get the recommendation letter, even forcing Todoroki to use his fire. Each one was something that occurred from his own actions, not his words. Ah, you always know what to say, Shoto. I'm so glad to have you and Momo as friends. The freckled boy grinned as he glanced at the son of Endeavor, noting the barest hint of a smile. Although I must admit, you get awfully nosy at times, Izuku. It can get annoying. The blunt statement made the teen wince and laugh bashfully. As night finally fell, it was revealed the two classes would be having a test of bravery competition where the students of 1A would go around a trail while 1B attempted to scare them. Midoriya's classmates found it rather amusing that their classmate, someone with the ability to make people see what they feared most, was going to get frightened by someone. Time passed as the pairs entered the forest one at a time to do their task. Everything seemed to be normal, until Pixie Bob caught a scent of something, a scent like smoke. Things spiraled down from there, the blonde pussycat being pulled into the forest and knocked down by a duo of villains. Izuku was the first one to run forward, only to be blocked by Tiger. A thought came to mind and he threw his head around. Koda was missing and, with how things were looking, in terrible danger, for the League of Villains was attacking once more. Thank you all for sticking around and I hope that you enjoyed. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We The Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.